Welcome back to Monster Tamer, a 2D Pokemon-like RPG created Phaser 3. Previously, we wrapped up our changes for our support for multiple monsters in our game. If you missed the previous videos, there'll be links in the video description to the source code to this point, as well as the complete source code for this video. There'll also be a link to the previous videos if you'd like to catch up, so let's get started. So now that we wrapped up our feature on adding in support for multiple monsters in our game, it's now time for us to take a look at our next feature, and that's going to be adding in the capability to catch monsters. So in most Pokemon type games, typically there's some type of mechanic for being able to catch wild monsters. And this is usually involved by battling the monster and trying to get the enemy monster's HP down. So then that way you can use some type of capture device, like a ball, to try to capture that monster so you can add them to your team. And so the math behind this can get pretty complex. It can involve things like the monster's HP, the type of capture device you use, and other settings like if it's night or day in the game, and different things like that. And so for our implementation, we're going to keep it pretty basic at first just to get everything working. And so we're going to work on just adding a simple randomness to capture a monster. And once we have everything connected together, we're going to work to refine our logic so then that way we can look at things like the monster's HP, add in a catch rate for each monster, and then that way our algorithm's a little more advanced than just the basic randomness. And so before we dive into our code and take a look at our task list further, we're going to go ahead and take a look at the feature we'll be building. Alright, so for our new mechanic, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to add a brand new item type to our game, and so we're going to add in a new damaged ball. So this is going to be like our Pokeball that'll be used for catching monsters. And so this is meant to be like a very basic version, kind of like the initial Pokeball. So the capture rate's very low. It works really well for low monsters. And so we'll be able to throw the ball in battle. And so we're going to refine our battle states. So then that way we can handle different item types accordingly. And so we're going to go ahead and have our animation to try to capture the monster. And then we have our classic catching animation where the ball will shake while we'll try to capture the enemy monster. And then either we'll be able to catch it or not catch it depending on a few different factors. And so in this scenario, you can see we caught our Carnodusk here, and so we'll be able to gain our XP for capturing the monster. And so after that, if we go into our monster party, we can see our new wild monster has now been added to our party. And so just to see an example of us not being able to catch a monster, we're going to go ahead and try to capture a different monster. So we're going to go ahead and throw the ball again. And then we'll see just a number of shakes depending on how close we are capturing the monster. We see they break free, so the monster reappears. And now our battle can continue as normal, and they're going to go ahead and attack our player monster. Alright, so now we see an example of what we'll be building. We're going to go ahead and take a look at our task list of the different things we need to implement in order to support catching monsters. Our first thing we need to do is we need to go ahead and load in our new assets we'll be using in our game. And so this will be the ball that we saw that we throw to capture one of our monsters. Once we load in our assets, we're going to go ahead and work on refining some of our existing data models that are tied to our items and our monsters. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and add a new item type, and that's going to be for capture. So then that way we're able to capture monsters. Previously for our items, we only had healing items to heal our monster with our potion. In addition to that, we're going to go ahead and add a new category field to our item model so then that way we can group items together. So an example is like potions. We could have a regular potion, a super potion, high potion. For our capture devices, we could have a damaged ball, a super ball, and different things like that. And so our category will allow us to give us a type to the items, and then that way we can reference that when we're working in our code. Once we have that defined, we're going to go ahead and update our items JSON to go ahead and have our new item, so then that way we can go ahead and use it. And we'll go ahead and pre-populate some of this in our data manager, so we'll have some items to use while we're testing. Once we do that, we're going to go ahead and refine our monster data model. And what we're going to do is we're going to update our ID field to be a string. So initially we wanted our ID field to be a unique identifier for each monster of a particular family. So as an example with Carnodusk, we could have, 3 different versions of it. And so each ID for each of those Carnodusks should be unique. And so what we're going to end up doing with this is when we have a monster appear in our game, we're going to assign them a unique ID. And we're just going to go ahead and use a GUID, a unique identifier, which will be a string. And so we're just going to update our data type to reflect that. And then that way we don't have to worry about it being a number. So once we do that, we're going to go ahead and create a brand new class. And this is going to represent our ball. And so this is just going to be an abstraction for our ball that we need to throw during a battle scene. And so this is going to encapsulate a lot of our animations, kind of like what we did with our player and enemy monsters. And so we'll have animations for throwing the ball, having it disappear off the screen, shake, and different things like that when we need to try to capture a monster. We're also going to go ahead and update our battle monster class to also have some new animations as well. And this is going to be tied to having the monster disappear when they go into the ball. Once we do that, we're going to work on updating our inventory scene, and what we're going to do is we're going to add support for our capture items. So currently we have different logic in there for the type of item we use and which scene we come from, and so what we're going to go ahead and do is add support for our capture items, so then that way we can, in our battle scene, then throw our ball. Versus if we're just on the world scene and we're looking at our inventory, we don't need to actually throw a ball, and so we'll need to handle saying, hey, we don't need to use that right now. Once we have that support in place, we'll switch over to our battle menu, and we're going to go ahead and add support for getting the actual item details. So previously, we just checked to see if an item's used, but now that we're going to have various category types during battle, we'll need actual item details so that we can react accordingly in our battle states. So for example, like using a healing item, we heal, versus the capture item, we try to capture the monster. Finally, we'll go ahead and switch over to our battle scene, and so what we'll do is we'll start adding in some new states for handling different items, and then we'll start adding in some stub logic for capturing our monster. And so this is where we're going to go ahead and do that basic randomness for catching a monster, and that we can do some quick testing. Alright, so then finally we're going to go ahead and wrap up by reviewing some more advanced monster catching logic that we can use in our game. And so we're going to go ahead and replace our logic that we had before, where we just had randomness. And now we're going to go ahead and add in logic so that we can look at like the monster's HP and use that to determine if what our possible catch rate could be. So if a monster's fully healed, we'll have a less chance to actually catch the monster, versus if they're below 25 HP, then we have a better chance of catching them. Alright, so now we finished reviewing our task list for catching monsters. We're going to go ahead and add in our logic we need for loading our new assets we'll be using for this feature. So what we'll go ahead and do is let's jump over to our asset keys. And what we'll do is under our battle asset keys, we're going to go ahead and add a new value. So we're just going to copy ball thumbnail here. We're going to go ahead and paste it. And we're just going to call this damaged ball. And I'm going to go ahead and paste that here for our value. And then let's jump over to our preload scene. And then what we'll do is let's go ahead and go to where we create our battle assets. We'll go ahead and copy our line here. Let's go ahead and paste it. And so we'll go ahead and have our damaged ball. And now for our path. So previously when we loaded in our ball thumbnail for our UI and our battle scene, we also added in a new asset that we never actually loaded. So under our assets folder, if we go into our images, monster tamer, battle, we should see this damaged ball PNG here. And that's the image we'll want to use for our ball. So what we'll go ahead and do is we'll replace Cosmo Ball with damaged ball PNG. Alright, so now we add in our new assets. That should bring this video to an end. In our next video, we're going to start working on adding in support for our new capture item to our item data model. So as a reminder, there's a link in the description of the video to the complete source code for this video. And as always, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the content. If you did enjoy the video, please consider liking the video and hitting the bell icon to be notified when the next video in the series is released. For more great Phaser 3 content, please see the links on your screen now.